Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning this week a very beautiful and powerful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Torah Tziva. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse on the day of Simchat Torah in the year Tafshin Chav Gimel, 59 years ago. The Rebbe went ahead and certified and edited this Chassidic discourse in honor of the Yontiv of Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah in the year Tafshin Nun Aleph, 31 years ago. So again, the name of the Chassidic discourse is called Torah Tziva, based on the verse in the last Torah portion of the 5 books of Moses, Parshas Is Aesop Bigger, where the Torah says that we read on Simchat Torah, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, that Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us in reference to the Torah, Meirasha Kehilas Yaakov, which basically means that the Torah is an inheritance to every one of the people in the congregation of Jacob. So in other words, the Torah that we have, it's our inheritance. So the Rebbe says it's known the questions that's asked. We know that it says in the Talmud, Haskein atzmacha lilma Torah. You should prepare yourself to learn Torah. You have to set aside yourself time every single day to learn Torah. Why? Because it's not an inheritance. Inheritance means you inherit it, so you have to do anything. But the Torah says, no, you have to learn Torah. It's not an inheritance. And what are we saying over here? It is an inheritance. So what does that mean? Over here it says it's an inheritance. In the Talmud it says clearly, no, it's not an inheritance. You have to learn Torah. That's question number one. Also, we have to understand, because what does inheritance literally mean? That you're inheriting something from your parents. In other words, something you don't have. But the fact is, every single Jewish person was at Mount Sinai, and everyone received the Torah. So for me, inheritance means I'm inheriting from someone else. I received the Torah. Why do I have to inherit it? Also, we have to understand, what does it say in the following verse? Vayehi b'shurun melech, Is Aesop Rosh Hayom Yachad Shiftei Yisrael. So the question is, what's the connection with the idea of that Torah is an inheritance? What it says after is Vayehi b'shurun melech, that God was the king for the righteous people. And also where it says, when Rosh Kehilas Yaakov, what it says in the first verse, that it's an inheritance to the Jewish people. Also, in the Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, what does it say? That it says, Rosh Kehilas Yaakov, referring to the Jewish people as Yaakov. What does it say in the next verse? Vayehi b'shurun melech, Is Aesop Rosh Hayom Yachad Shiftei Yisrael. So over there, the Jewish people are called Yeshurun, upright, Yeshurun Melech. And also in the end of the verse it says the term Yachad Shiftei Yisrael uses the term Yisrael. So the question is, why in this verse it say Yaakov? Next term it says also Yeshurun, another term for the Jewish people, and then another term on the name of Yisrael. So the Rebbe says the general idea is, why it's explained in many places in Chassidus, that in Torah there's 2 levels in Torah. There's 2 components of Torah. In other words, we know there's one component of Torah that it's Torah in itself. What is Torah in itself? It's the Chachma, it's the intellect, and the will of Hashem. So if you want to know what Torah is the intellect and the will of Hashem. That's one component of Torah. Then we know Torah came down to this world. And through learning Torah, we have the power to transform and refine the world. And starting off by our own refinement. When we sit and learn Torah, we're refining ourselves. We're refining the intellect of our animal soul. And by refining it, we're elevating it actually to holiness. So that's the second component of Torah. The way Torah refines the world, and Torah refines ourselves, and more specifically, personally, our intellect of our animal soul. And based on this, the Rebbe says, that's why he says, a person, la'olam yasek adam b'Torah mitzvahs. A person should always learn Torah and do mitzvahs, even for the wrong reasons. Whatever motivates you. Why? Because initially you'll do it for the wrong reasons. And eventually you'll end up doing it for the right reasons. In other words, when you start off learning Torah, so you do it why? Either for some kind of prize or an award, or you're doing it to transform yourself, your animal soul, the intellect of your animal soul. And it was like, and the Rebbe quotes in the Talmud where it says, "Mi karek hi avid inish, adaitet nafshi kavid." When initially he's doing it for selfish reasons, to transform himself. Afterwards, you get to the higher level of learning Torah L'Shma. You're learning Torah just for Hashem, for Torah itself, which is not about transformation. So again, to recap, we see there's two components in Torah. Torah in itself, where it's the intellect and the will of Hashem. That's one component, connecting to the intellect and will of Hashem. And the other one is transformation. And they're both correct. And unfortunately, we start with the part that relates to us. We want to transform ourselves. But ultimately, we want to get to the point where we're learning Torah. We want to connect to Hashem, the intellect and the will of Hashem. So based on this, Rebbe says, that's why Torah is called an inheritance. What does it mean it's an inheritance? In other words, on one hand we're saying it's an inheritance, but on the other hand we said, no, learn Torah because it's not an inheritance. What does it mean it's an inheritance? You're learning Torah because it's not an inheritance. So what's the inheritance part? So the Rebbe explains that the reason why it's called an inheritance is because of the transformation that takes place when you learn Torah. Why is that an inheritance? Because we know that in the physical world, there's holy sparks. And there's holy sparks in the physical world, and there's holy sparks in the intellect of the animal soul. Now, these holy sparks are actually from a very, very high source. They're from the source of Tohu. We know there's two worlds. There's the world of Tohu, which is much higher, the world of Tikkun, which is lower. So originally when God wanted to create the world, he created with Tohu, but it couldn't last. So there was sparks all over the world from Tohu. So in the world and in the animal soul, there's sparks from Tohu, which is much higher. We're living in the world of Tikkun. Now, the source of our souls is from Tikkun, in the world of Tikkun. So when we engage with the ability that we have with the source of Tikkun in this world, we're actually elevating the sparks of Tohu, which are in the world and our animal soul. And that's why we know that when it comes to the two famous brothers, Yaakov and Esav, so who was the older one? Esav was the older one. And Yaakov was the smaller one. So technically, biologically, yeah, Esav was older. But he's not only called older physically, but also spiritually he was older. Spiritually, he's bigger. Why is Aesop bigger than Yaakov? And the answer is because the source of Aesop is in the world of Tohu. He comes spiritually from a higher space, a higher place. In other words, because the world of Tohu, it's a lot of light. A lot of light. It's big. On the other hand, what's the source of Yaakov? In Tikkun. And we know the light of Tikkun is much smaller, much more limited, in small vessels. Now, since Yaakov and Esav are brothers, as we know, the famous verse says, Esav and Yaakov are brothers, and a brother inherits one another. So when a soul of a Jewish person that's in the world of Tikkun transforms the world, transforms his intellect, transforms the Esavs of the world, the big lights of Tohu in the world, so then you inherit the world of Tohu, the spark of Tohu. So again, you have to learn, because yes, Torah is not an inheritance. So what does it mean? What is the inheritance? It's an inheritance of sparks that you elevate when you learn Torah. So on the other hand, that's in terms of Meirasha Kehilas Yaakov. But when the Talmud says that you should prepare yourself to learn Torah because it's not inheritance, what is that referring to? That's referring to Torah, which is not about transformation, elevating sparks. And how do you get to the level of prepare yourself to learn Torah, not about elevating sparks? That's about learning Torah just for the sake of Hashem. In other words, you're connecting to it the intellect and the will of Hashem. And that's why it says, prepare yourself to learn Torah. What do you mean prepared? Because you have to work hard. That your Torah you should be learning just for the sake of Hashem. That's hard, because usually everyone asks, what's in it for me? Well, how am I going to benefit from it? So you say, no, I just want to connect to Hashem. That's not easy. For no interest, no benefit, no side reasons. You just want to connect to Hashem. And not even to transform yourself, which is also a benefit. That's why you have to prepare yourself to learn Torah. That you're learning it just for the sake of Hashem. And when a person learns Torah just for the sake of Hashem, then you're drawing down the purest part of Torah, literally the essence of Torah. And this level of Torah is even higher than the lights of Tohu that we inherit by transforming the world. And that's not an inheritance. So again, to recap, there's two levels. There's a level of Torah, which is basically transforming the world, and then when we do that, we elevate, and we create an inheritance for ourselves in the lights of Tohu. But then when we reach the level we're learning Torah just because, we actually reach a much higher, a much deeper, a much more powerful place. So based on this, Rebbe explains a verse in the previous Torah portion, Parshas Haazinu, where it says, Yaroif kamotor likchi tizal katal imrosi, where it refers to Torah. So it says as follows, that the Torah on one hand is compared, likchi, Torah is referred to motor, like rain, and on the other hand, the imrosi, the words of Hashem, is compared to what? Tal, dew. So what's the difference between rain and dew? So we know that rain, how does rain come? Rain comes from the cloud that produces the rain from when the earth becomes moist. So when the earth becomes moist, that's when it starts raining. As the verse says in the Torah, "Ve'ed yalam in haaretz," there's a mist that comes up from the earth. The hishkas pnei adama, and then the rain comes down and irrigates the whole earth. So that's rain. So rain starts down below, that when from the earth, then it comes down from on high. Tal, on the other hand, comes straight from heaven. Tal comes straight from heaven. So that's physically. The same thing applies on a spiritual level. What does that mean? What is mutter? Mutter, we said, is rain that's inspired by the earth. So that comes, spiritually, what does rain come from? That comes when a person transforms and elevates the physical world. Like it says on the verse, Yarev kamater likchi, so the commentaries say that when the people break their back, then that's when the rain comes down. So rain comes by effort. When we do our effort, we have rain, spiritual rain. On the other hand, tal, dew, that comes a gift from Hashem. Hashem gives us a gift. Now, the reason why Torah is compared to dew and to rain, both components, is it effort, or is it coming from Hashem? And the answer is because in Torah there's two things, there's two components. In other words, the component of Torah that we're here to transform the world and to transform our animal soul's intellect. That's when a person learns and puts in the effort, and that's when you're doing the work. That creates Yarav Kamata Relikhi. That's the inheritance, you're elevating the holy sparks. But on the other hand, Torah by itself, just connecting to the pureness of Torah, it's Torah's Hashem, the intellect and the will of Hashem, the way it's like in the world of Atzilut, the highest world, which is before it even comes down, higher than the level before it comes down to the world of Bri Yitzia Asiyah. And to connect to that level, that comes when you learn Torah L'Shma, just for the right reasons. And that's Tizal Katalim Rasi, just like dew, it comes as a gift from Hashem. So based on this, Rebbe says, this is also what it says, we know it says in the Talmud, that whoever whoever sits and learns, Hashem learns with you. You sit down to learn, you take out a Chumash, you take out a Mishnayos, Talmud, Kabbalah, whatever you sit and learn, Hashem is learning with you. You always have a study partner, besides the study partner that you're learning with, or you're learning yourself or with someone else, but Hashem is always studying with you. What does that mean? That when a person learns Lishma, you just want to connect to the infinite Hashem, then you draw down the revelation of Torah the way it's literally on high, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shoyne, Kenegde, which is referring to Tal Torah. So in other words, like this, there's two levels in Torah. There's a component that you're doing it to transform. That's like rain. And then you're doing it because you want to connect to the infinite Hashem. That's like dew, and that's when Hashem learns with you, Tal Torah. So Rebbe says, these two components of Torah, which is, in other words, the rain of Torah, the one that you're putting the effort in to transform, and the other one that you're basically, it's like you're just connecting with Hashem, the rain of Torah spiritually and the dew of Torah that's just like the revealed part of Torah and the pnimius of Torah, the concealed part of Torah. In other words, as follows: if you look at the revealed part of Torah, Chumash, Mishnah, Talmud, etc., which deals with physical things. So what happens is when you learn Torah, you can almost you get so absorbed in what the Mishnah is, the Mishnah, the Talmud, they're discussing different things, different situations, you're dealing with the physical world. So godliness is concealed, because you're dealing with a physical thing. Take any piece of Talmud, whether you're dealing with a piece of property, you're talking with an animal, you're talking about a dispute, whatever you're talking about, so you're talking about a thing, you're talking about something physical. So the godliness is concealed. In order that when you're learning Torah, the godliness should be revealed in the learning Torah, with the person that's learning Torah, so you have to refine yourself. And when you refine yourself, you say, no, this is what Hashem is saying. Even though you're learning something physical, you wonder, what is Hashem really saying? You focus on the fact that it's God's Torah. Then it says, if you merit that you're always focused, when you're learning the revealed part of Torah, that's Hashem's Torah, then it becomes a healthy and a poison of life. It becomes a life source. In other words, when a person merits and he transforms himself, then it becomes a great thing, because otherwise you can get lost. And what I think, and what you think, and you forget about it's Hashem. But it's really important to remember that when you're learning Torah, because Hashem is concealed, remember to bring out Hashem, that Hashem should be the revealed part of what you're learning. So that is generally when it comes to the revealed part of Torah. On the other hand, when it comes to Pnimius HaTorah, when it comes to Chassidus, when it comes to Kabbalah, when it comes to Zohar, so when you read that, guess what? It's all about God. So God is revealed. You have to use physical analogies to try to understand what it's saying, because we're living in this physical world. But generally speaking, when you learn the revealed part of the Torah, what you're dealing with is physical things, and you try to remember it's God. But on the other hand, when you're learning Pnimius HaTorah and Chassidus, what's natural is that it's from God. And obviously, you have to use physical analogies to understand what you're studying. And to take it a step further, Rebbe says as follows. Even after you're learning the revealed part of Torah, and you transform yourself, that you're always seeing the godliness in it. So as you're dealing with the revealed part of Torah, and you thank God, you're able to see that it's all God. It's not the same revelation as in Chassidut, in Kabbalah. Why? Because let's say you're learning the revealed part of Torah. Remember, yes, it's Hashem's Torah, I get it. But still, it's not the same clarity as Pnimius HaTorah. Why? Because since the light of the revealed part of Torah, Nigla Torah, the revealed part of Torah, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with physical things. So they conceal naturally the light of Hashem. So even after you take away the concealment, you said, this is what Hashem wants, and you focus on the fact it's from Hashem, it's still not as clear as when you're learning Chassidus. And that's why the revealed part of Torah is more analogous to the idea of rain. Why? Because in rain, we're doing the work, and it comes down from heaven. So it's really all about our effort. So in Nigla Torah, the natural and default setting is, it's more physical, and God's concealed, so it's more compared to rain. Now, and there's really two components to it. In other words, because when you learn the revealed part of Torah, so you have to work hard to transform yourself. In other words, you have to learn to try to make it that you're comprehending and you're trying to understand it, and you want to transform yourself. Just like we said, when a person out in the field, you literally have to break your back to get the earth ready so that it should rain afterwards. But even then, the godly light that shines, it's close within the world. So it's still called mutter, it's still called rain. But on the other hand, when you're dealing with Chassidus, then you see godliness. And that's why it's connected more to the idea of Tal Torah, the dew of Torah. Now, so far we learned two components to Torah. One is the transformative part, where God is more concealed. And then we learned about what? The revealed part, where godliness is more revealed. Nigla, the revealed part, the hidden part of Torah, different ways of learning Torah, it's about transformation, about seeing the light, etc. So Rebbe says now, besides these two components of Torah that we just learned till now, which is basically the inheritance of Torah by transforming, and prepare yourself to learn Torah, to connecting to the light of Torah, there's another level of Torah. What's another level of Torah? The level of Torah which is called a gift. Matana, a gift. Like we know, when we say, for example, the blessings when we get an aliyah to the Torah, what does it say? V'nosan lanu es teirasai. He gave us the Torah. That means Torah is a gift. And how do we finish off? Noisein ha-Torah. The Torah is a gift. So there's another whole new component now. Noisein. It's a gift. And we know, for example, the holiday of Shavuot, what is it called? Zman Matan Torah Seinu. The holiday that God gave us a Torah, or gives the Torah. It's all about giving. So it's a new level, the level of a gift. Now, so we have the component where Torah's inheritance, which means it's our effort, we're transforming ourselves, and we're elevating sparks. Then we have the level that we're preparing ourselves to learn Torah, which means we're working hard to see God and godliness. We're connecting to the Shema of Torah, the fact that it's Hashem. But now there's even a higher level, higher than preparing yourself to learn Torah just for its own sake. It's called a gift. What does that mean? And the Rebbe explains as follows. What did we say before? We used an analogy of rain and dew. that rain comes by our effort, and dew is a gift from above. In other words, so what's the difference between rain and dew? Because rain refers to what? Spiritually, the person doing the spiritual work. Like, for example, it says clearly in the Shema, "V'hayim shemoya," if you're going to listen, and then the sati mitar. So it's based on our effort. That's how we're going to get. That's how we're going to get a result. Tal, dew, on the other hand, it's not based on work. As we know, it says tal loy metzar. There's always dew. Hashem will always give dew. You work, you don't work, you're always going to have dew. Same thing also on a spiritual level. That matar, which is rain, that's when things come down by doing the work, and in the Kabbalistic term, it's when we do our part. And tal, on the other hand, it comes from above. That's when gift from above. Now, so what does that mean practically? When we're referring to Tal Torah, the part that it's a gift, so it's the way Torah comes down by learning Torah l'shma. We're learning for the sake of Hashem. And like it says, Kol HaKoireh V'Shoyne, you're sitting and learning Torah. Why? Just because you want to connect to Hashem, to the intellect of Hashem, the will of Hashem. Is a Kadosh Baruch Hu Koireh V'Shoyne Connectoi. Hashem obviously is learning with you. That's generally speaking what we spoke about till now. But let's go more specific and more in detail. Even the Torah that we're getting from above, the level of Tal Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shoyer V'Shoyne, God is learning with us Torah. What's causing God to learn with us Torah? Because you're sitting and learning, you're connecting l'shma to the intellect and the will of Hashem, so Hashem is learning with you. So since what's inspiring the Tal? Your effort. So it goes under the category also of matar. It's also rain, because rain means you're doing the work here, and that causes it to come above. Tal, so in the case where you're learning lishma, so it's your learning that's causing Hashem to learn with you. Now obviously Tal is a much higher level. But really Tal means it just comes without you doing anything, not because you're learning Torah lishma. In other words, Tal comes just on its own. So noisei not Torah, the matana of Torah is not where you're learning Torah and you're getting it as a gift. It's totally 100% the gift from God. You didn't do anything for it. So based on this, Rebbe explains why it says in the Talmud, the first 3 hours of the day, Hashem sits and learns Torah. That's what it says in the first 3 hours of the day. Hashem sits and learns Torah. So the question is asked, what does it mean? We just learned, Kol HaKoireh V'Shoyne, Kadosh Baruch Hu V'Shoyne Kenegdoi. Whoever sits and learns, Hashem is learning with you. Now, Jewish people, or people learn Torah when? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In other words, one person is learning in the morning, one is in the afternoon, and this person this hour, if at any time of the day, any day of the week, there's somebody somewhere in the world learning Torah. If it's not here, it's in a different country, but someone is always learning Torah. Now, since anytime someone's learning Torah, Hashem is learning Torah. So if that's the case, Hashem is busy learning Torah 24/7. But nevertheless, what does it say in the Talmud? The first 3 hours a day, Hashem is learning Torah. What does that mean? Hashem is always technically learning Torah. What does it mean that only the first 3 hours Hashem is learning Torah? So the idea is as follows. When we say that when somebody learns Torah, Hashem is learning with you, 100% sure Hashem is learning with you. But why is Hashem learning then Torah? It's becoming because of a isarus l'tata. Because the person in this world's learning, that's why Hashem is learning. What's the cause? What's causing Hashem to learn Torah? Because we're learning down here. Now, so since what's the cause because we're learning Torah? So therefore, what the flow of energy, the way Hashem is learning Torah, that has to do with the way the person's learning. So the steam, the inspiration, the energy that's causing Hashem to learn Torah, and the depth that Hashem is learning Torah, is based on the effort the person is learning Torah in this world. And that's why it says, Kol HaKoireh V'Shoyne, HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Shoyne Kenegdoi. Whoever sits and learns, Hashem is learning at the same time with you. In other words, it's Kenegdoi. Based on the way you're learning, that's the way Hashem is learning. So, in other words, 24/7, sure Hashem is learning, but relative to the way you are learning. On the other hand, when it comes to the first 3 hours a day, what does it say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'Yoshev Is Aesop Bigger. Hashem is learning Torah. Not because of you. Hashem is the energy of Torah. Hashem is learning Torah the first 3 hours a day. It's coming totally as a gift from above. A place where we cannot reach even that place. So that is the highest level of Tal. That's real Tal Torah. That's dew of Torah, which means that's a gift from Hashem. Why? Because the source of Tal Torah is where? In the first 3 levels of Atik. We know the highest sphere is Keser. In Keser, there's 2 levels, Atik and Arich. Atik is the higher one. So the first 3 hours a day is connected to into Keser in Atik, the higher level of Keser, in the first 3 levels of it. And that's the connection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'Yoshev Aesop Torah. Hashem is learning Torah. What are we referring to? Tal Torah, the gift of Torah, the dew of Torah, with the first 3 hours in the day. Why? Because the first 3 hours is the first 3 levels of Atik. Now, another was going to explain this deep concept based on, as we know, that even when we're dealing with Chassidus, even when we're dealing with Kabbalah, even when we're dealing with Zohar, even when we're dealing at all levels of Pnimius Torah, the innermost secrets of the Torah, there's the external part of the Pnimius Torah, and then there's the thank you. There's the external part of learning Torah, of the Pnimius Torah, and there's the internal part of Pnimius Torah. And those as follows. In Pnimius Torah, when you learn Chassidus, when you learn Kabbalah, when you learn Zohar, so there's a concept called Seder Hishtalshlus, the way things flow from one level to the next level, different worlds, different spheres, etc. That's the revealed part. Anytime that you're saying Seder Hishtalshlus, the way things flow down, and you're able to relate to it, so that's the revealed part of Pnimius Torah. Just like when you have, on a mashal, on a parable example, in the revealed part of Torah, when you deal with the physical things in the world. Obviously, in the revealed part of Torah, you're dealing with literally something physical. You're dealing with a house, you're dealing with a property, you're dealing with a person, you're dealing with an animal, you're dealing with something physical. In Pnimius Torah, you're not dealing with a physical structure, you're dealing with a spiritual structure, but it's still a structure. So this level where it's a structure, there's a level, there's a flow, there's a description, that's called a part that we can comprehend. So there's a component of Pnimius Torah which is chitonis, which we could comprehend. That's the external part of Pnimius Torah. But the main part of Pnimius Torah is the part where it's called Tainug de Lamaila. We know in Keser, the highest level, there's Ratzon, the higher level is Tainug. So Tainug is like not external pleasure, it's deep satisfaction, pleasure. It's hard to describe it. We're dealing with the physical world, but again, we're trying to stay away from the physical description. Otherwise, we're going to be back to Hasaga, understanding. Tainug, which means Tainug. The key word is Tainug, pleasure. Shalamayla me Hasaga. It's higher than comprehension, because once you comprehend it, then it's already the chitonius of Pnimius Torah, and we're dealing specifically with the Pnimius of Pnimius Torah. So that's the higher. So in Pnimius Torah you have chitonius, which is Seder Hishtalshlus, things that the ebb and flow, and then you have Tainug Shalamayla Me'asaga. It's never explained as follows. When you're drawing down by learning Pnimius Torah, by learning Torah L'Shma. And then this we said, when you learn, Hashem is learning with you. And those where it says, the second level, Haskein Answakal, you should prepare to learn Torah L'Shma. That's referring to what? The second level is referring to the revealed part of Pnimius Torah, which is talking about levels of Ishtalshalos, different levels of worlds and Sirot, etc. But on the other hand, drawing down Pnimius Torah, the essence of Pnimius Torah, Tainug, which is above intellect. And in this it says, the first 3 hours of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is sitting and learning Torah. And that's the real gift of Torah. What's the gift of Torah? Tainug, which is higher than Asaga. Pleasure, which is higher than comprehension and understanding. So we just learned a whole new level of Limud HaTorah. Limud HaTorah, which is Matana, which is based when Hashem is sitting and learning Torah, which is Tal Torah. And that is the level of what? Tainug, pleasure above intellect, above understanding, above logic, above anything, just pure pleasure. So based on this, the Rebbe explains why it says Torah tziva lanu me'rasha kehilas Yaakov. So the first thing it says, inheritance for the community of Jacob. Vayehi b'shurun melech, and then it says Yachad shiftei Yisrael. There's 3 different levels. In other words, This, that Torah is an inheritance for everybody. That's level of Yaakov. Mirosha Kilos Yaakov. That's level number one. This, that we say you should prepare yourself to learn Torah because it's not an inheritance, which basically means learning Torah for the right reasons. That's level of Yisrael. And the highest level, the level of Torah, which is it's a gift, that's the level of Yeshurim. 3 different levels. And the Rebbe is now going to explain the 3 levels as follows. What did we say? The first level is Mirosha Kilos Yaakov, by transforming into the level of Yaakov. What's the connection with Yaakov, Jacob, and transformation? So Rebbe says Yaakov is known, it's brought down the Yaakov is considered the level of an Eved, someone that serves Hashem. And the Rebbe quotes the verse where it says, Shema Ilai Yaakov Avdi. The verse refers to Yaakov as Hashem's servant. So Yaakov is a level of a servant. On the other hand, the term Yisrael is referring to the component where we relate to Hashem as a ben, as a son. Like it says the verse in the Torah, B'ni b'chayri Yisrael. That Yisrael is called B'ni, a son. What's the avoida? What's the spiritual work of Yaakov? The one that's the level of a servant. He serves Hashem. What does that mean? He's serving Hashem. He's serving Hashem to fixing the concealment of the world, concealment of Shem Elokim. So Yaakov is a servant serving Hashem to fix the concealment of Shem Elokim from the part that God is finite in the world. Yisrael, on the other hand, what is the avodah of Yisrael? Ki sarisam Elokim. He fought with Elokim. In other words, what does that mean? He rules over Elokim. It's not that he's fixing Elokim. He rules over Elokim. And like based on like what it says in the Zohar, that Yisrael and Yaakov actually go against the 2 names Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elokim. In other words, in reference to Yaakov, which actually comes from the component of Yud, Ekev. So you have, what do you have? You have the concealment of Elokim. And what's the job of Yaakov, Yud Ekev, to go ahead and fix the concealment of Elokim? So Yaakov is busy dealing with Elokim. He's dealing with the concealment. And even after he transforms and he takes away the concealment, and by taking away the concealment, you have now what? You have the revelation of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But still, nevertheless, the revelation of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it is the way it comes to the level of Elokim. So even though Yaakov works with getting rid of the concealment of Elokim to go to Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but even after you have the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it's still built based on the foundation of Elokim. On the other hand, the name Yisrael, as we said before, what does it mean Yisrael is? Because he fought with Elokim. In other words, there's no Elokim does not do any concealment. There's no concealment of Elokim. So what do you have? You have strictly the revelation of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And that comes to the name of Yisrael, which means he's working with just revealing Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Now, so notice, just to recap real quick. What the Rebbe is saying is that the avodah of Yaakov is to transform Elokim. And you get to Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. The avodah of Yisrael is just to deal with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, bring godliness into the world. And like it says in the Torah, from the Tal Rebbe, it says as follows, that the work of the 6 days of the week, generally, that's the avodah of Yaakov. During the week, we're dealing with we're dealing with the concealment of the world. That's what we're busy with, transforming the world. Notice we're trying to fix the concealment of Shem Elokim. That's during the week. On the other hand, what happens on Shabbos? Shabbos, we're on the level of Yisrael. We're on the level of Yisrael, which means, because what does it say in reference to Shabbos? What does it say in the Torah? Vayichal Elokim. God finished. What does that mean he finished? He finished the avodah of Shem Elokim. He finished the work of concealment and contraction of Elokim, and from now on for Shabbos we have the revelation of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And therefore on Shabbos you don't have to do any transformation. What's our avodah on Shabbos? During the week our avodah is to transform the world. Our avodah on Shabbos is to have oinig, real pleasure of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is much higher than the level of transformation of avodas berurim. Now, so that we have so far the level we explain, Mirosha Kilos Yaakov. Yaakov is transformation of Hashem Elokim. Yachad Shiftei Yisrael is basically revealing Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in the world. But now we're going to deal with Vayihi B'Shurun Melech. We're called Yeshurun. Yeshurun is actually higher than Yisrael. Yeshurun is our next level up. What's Yeshurun the next level of? Yeshurun comes from the word of shir, song. What does song mean? It comes from a something which is round, like a ring. A ring doesn't have a beginning and an end. You take a ring, where do you start? Where do you end? It just keeps on going. So Yeshurun represents something which goes infinite. And it's brought down in the Torah why Jewish people called Yeshurun. And the reason why we call Yeshurun is because the source of our soul is in the place of Hashem before Hashem created the world, in the place where Hashem initially had a thought of creating the world. So in other words, our source is in Olav Machshava, in the thought of Hashem. He's going to create the world, He's going to create human beings, and we're going to make the world a better place. So even though we're down here, but our source is in the thought of Hashem. Now, so what does that mean practically? There's a difference between Yeshurun and Yisrael, because even though, what did we say? Yisrael is a very high level. He fought with Elokim, and there's no Elokim, and it's only about Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But nevertheless, Yisrael, even though it's connected to Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but it's connected to the revelation of the source of the soul, which is higher than the part where it's coming into the body. In other words, like this. It's explained many places in Chassidus that Yaakov is the soul which comes into the body and deals with the body, deals with concealment. Yisrael, on the other hand, is the source of the soul, which is higher than coming to the body. Yaakov is the part that deals with the world, and Yisrael is higher from coming in. But nevertheless, Yisrael is what? He's considered a ben, a son. Now, what does ben mean, a son? So ben means it's a son. It means it came out from the Father. It's not in the Father, it came out of the Father. So even though Yisrael is above being involved in the body, but still it came, what's the source? The source comes from out of the Father. On the other hand, Yeshurun is referring to the soul, the way it's connected in the essence of Hashem. Like the Son, while he's still in the Father, before he came out. So Yisrael is after, the source of Yisrael is after he came out from the Father. On the other hand, Yeshurun is the way it's connected in the essence of the Father before it actually came out. And that's why Yeshurun is called from the expression of shear, where it doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. Why? Because in the level of the soul, once it comes out from the Father, there's different levels. But on the other hand, shear means there's no beginning and there's no end. It means it's connected to the essence of the source of the infinite light. And that's why when it says, Vayihi b'Shurun Melech, which again referring to the where the soul is connected to the essence of Hashem, no beginning, no end, and it says in the Torah, what is that referring to? It's referring to Rosh Hashanah. And when what happens in Rosh Hashanah, we say to Hashem, Tamlichuni Aleichem, we want you to be king over us. How can we ask Hashem to be king over us? Because when you reveal the essence of the soul, the way it's connected into the infinite essence, light of Hashem, then you can ask Hashem to be king. Because if it's after it came out, how can we ask Hashem to be king? Hashem is the king. But when we're connected to the essence, infinite light of Hashem, we have the power to ask Hashem to be the king over us. So based on this, Rebbe explains as follows. And this is the connection of these three components of the Jewish people. Yaakov, the way we deal with concealment, Shem Elokim. Yisrael, they were dealing with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but the way it's connected, where he already came out from the source of the Father, and Yeshurun, the way it's totally connected inside. And those three components are connected to three components of Torah. What does that mean? The first component we said of Torah is the fact that it's inheritance. What does it mean it's inheritance? That we're inheriting the sparks by elevating the sparks of Torah. By transforming the world and transforming our intellect of the animal soul, we inherit these powerful sparks. What does that come from? It comes from the level of Yaakov, transforming the world. The level of Yaakov, Yud Eikev. That's the first level. What's the second level? That we should prepare ourselves to learn Torah. In other words, we're learning Torah Lishma. So we're connecting to Torah the way it's on high, Pnimius Torah. How do we do that? Not from the level of Yaakov, that's from the level of Yisrael. Because when you learn Torah on the level of Yisrael, not to transform the world, you want to basically bring Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in the world. On the other hand, the highest level of Torah, which is called the Matana, the gift of Torah, which is drawing down the Tainug, the pleasure of Torah, which is above understanding, which is above any different levels. That's the level of Yeshurun. So those are the three levels in Torah. So now the Rebbe asks a very, very powerful question. He says as follows. What did we just learn? What's the first level? Yerusha, an inheritance. How do we define Yerusha, an inheritance? Because when you learn Torah and you transform the world and you transform the intellect of your animal soul, you're inheriting the sparks of Toyu that's in the world and then and the intellect of the animal soul. But the fact is, when we say Meirasha, it's an inheritance, and we know you can't take the verse out of its simple context, it means that Torah is an inheritance. Not by learning Torah. I'm going to elevate a spark. I'm going to elevate the spark of my intellect, of my animal soul. Oh, that's the inheritance, the holy spark. But Torah means Torah is the inheritance. So now the Rebbe is going to explain the truth is actually a fourth level. A fourth level in Torah, and that is called Yerusha, an inheritance of Torah. And it was not the inheritance, we're inheriting something else, but we're actually inheriting Torah itself. Torah itself is an inheritance. And the component, this fourth level, that Torah is an inheritance, is actually higher than Torah being as a gift, where it's Yeshurun coming from the essence of the infinite light of Hashem. In other words, like this. This is what we explained before, that Yerusha, an inheritance, that's lower than Torah. Why? Because there's two components to inheritance. On one hand, it's lower than Torah, and the other hand, now we're saying it's even higher. The way we explained it before, an inheritance is lower. Why? Because what does an inheritance mean? Inheritance means that you, whoever we are, we're inheriting something else. Now, when you inherit, that means you're related to the person, and therefore, by default, you're going to inherit it. Does the person want to give it to you? Maybe yeah, maybe not. You're not getting it because he wanted to give it to you. When you say you inherited something, you didn't get it because the person wanted to give it to you. There's laws of inheritance, and therefore you got it. So it has really nothing to do with the person gave you anything. You inherited. That's the lower level of Yerusha. Like we said before, by learning Torah, by elevating the sparks, great, you're getting a spark. On the other hand, why is a gift higher? Because a gift is the giver wanted to give it to you. Tal Torah, Hashem is giving us. He's giving us the gift. Now, so why do we inherit? Because basically we're related. But now we're talking a whole different level of inheritance. There's a component of inheritance which is called that the inheritor is literally one with the person he's inheriting from. It's not that he's a relative and therefore he gets the inheritance. The inheritor is one with the person he's inheriting from. It's a real bond. It's not because they're related, therefore you're getting it. No. The person is actually literally connected to the person he's inheriting from. So obviously, because you're connected, therefore you're inheriting. You're inheriting because you're a relation. No, you're really connected. And because you're connected, that's why you're inheriting. In other words, so why you're inheriting? Not because you inherited. You're one with the person. You're literally standing with the person. You're standing strong with the person that you're inheriting from. So in this level of inheritance, where you're standing one with the person you're inheriting from, it's actually higher than a gift. Because a gift is a person is giving it to you. Here he's not giving it to you. You're one with the person by default. It's like one hand giving the other hand. One hand giving the other hand. It's not one hand giving the hand. It's one person. If this hand needs it, the other hand automatically gives it. So a true inheritance, a higher level of inheritance, is that the two people that are connected as one, and by default, sure they inherit. It's a given that they're going to inherit. But the relationship is primary. The relationship is strong, is real. In other words, by a gift, there's a giver and a receiver, and the giver wants to give it. But an inheritance on this level, he doesn't have to give it. It's one. It's higher than he wants to give it. So based on this, we understand why, based on this level of Yerusha, where they're literally standing on the same level, now we know when it comes on this level why the Torah says, which is again higher than even a gift, it says Meirasha. And again, we're telling you the insight that Meirasha means you're standing one with Hashem. It's one. It's not like Hashem is giving, it's one. That's why it says Kehilas Yaakov. It's an inheritance of the community of Jacob. Why? Because Yisrael and Yeshurun, talk about the quality of the Jewish it's quality. What does Yisrael mean? He fought, and therefore he got the name Yisrael. Yeshurun, you're standing upright, you're doing something. So it has to do with revelation. The name Yeshurun and Yisrael is revelation. You did something for it. On the other hand, when it comes to a real inheritance, that the person that's inheriting is one with the person he's inheriting from, that's all about Yaakov, that's Yaakov's real name. It's called the Shem HaEtzem. That's his real name. Because they were one with Hashem. So now the Rebbe asks a simple question. In other words, like this. The essence of our soul, on the level of Yaakov, we're all one. All Jewish people are one. If you look in the essence, we're all one. We're all one and we're all equal. Yerusha on the higher level, we're all one and we're equal. And that's why we use the term Yaakov. But that's 1 second. One and equal, isn't the term Yeshurun much more stronger for that? Why? What did we say before? What does Yeshurun mean? It's like a chain. It keeps on going. There's no beginning, there's no end. But nevertheless, you're saying Yeshurun is the level of a gift, where there's a giver and a receiver. And he wanted to give. On the other hand, Yerusha, inheritance, where they're really worldly one. You're saying Yaakov, it's really, the term Yeshurun should have been there. Yeshurun means there's no beginning, no end. That's more appropriate for the higher level of Yerusha, rather than in a gift where there's a giver and a receiver. So Rebbe explains it as follows. There's a verse that says, Yivchar lanu nachlaseinu. Yivchar means to choose. Bechira comes from the word bechira, choosing. Nachlaseinu, inheritance. Two terms. Choosing and inheritance. They're opposites. You're either choosing or it's inheritance. If you're choosing, it's not an inheritance. If inheritance, you don't need to choose. But it says Yivchar, choosing and inheritance, as going Yaakov, referring to Yaakov. So he says two components. On one hand, he says Yivchar, which means choosing, and then it says nachlaseinu, an inheritance. So how do the two go together? And they were explaining this. What does choosing mean? Yivchar lanu. Hashem chose the Jewish people. Hashem chose to want us. Hashem wasn't forced to want us. Hashem chose to want us. Yerusha, inheritance, and again, the higher level of Yerusha, where you're literally standing one with Hashem. It's Hashem didn't choose us. We're literally one with Hashem. We're part of Hashem. Now, so Yerusha is much deeper. But you're going to ask 1 second. But Bechira is also strong. When Hashem is choosing, why is He choosing? The essence of Hashem is choosing the Jewish people. He doesn't have to choose us. He could have chose something else. He could have not chose the Jewish people. But what does it mean Hashem chose? Hashem chose. Hashem Himself chose. So, but the truth is, when Hashem is choosing, it's not the essence of Hashem that's choosing. It's the will of Hashem that's choosing. Hashem is wanting to choose the Jewish people. Because he chose to want the Jewish people. In other words, this. Even the fact that Hashem is choosing, and that's the cause of why He's wanting, it's huge of the essence of Hashem. And he obviously he doesn't have to, etc. But it's not the essence of Hashem Himself. And it was like this. When it comes to choosing, yes, it's a very, very, very high place in Hashem. But it's still not the essence of Hashem. There's still a choice. When it comes to Yerusha, we're literally one with Hashem. So based on this, Rebbe explains as follows. When it comes to a matana, a gift, it says the term Yeshurun. Why? And when it comes to the inheritance, it says Yaakov. Why is that? Because what does a matana mean? A matana means a gift. There's a giver and the receiver. And the giver decided to give the gift to the receiver. Hashem chose to give us. Why did Hashem choose that? Because why did Hashem choose to give? Because He was boicher. He chose. He chose to want it. Like, for example, we say in the blessings of the Torah, Hashem chose us from all the nations. He looked around at all the nations, He chose us. And therefore He gave it to us. In other words, He chose us, and therefore He gave it to us. So the giving is based on a choice. Now, choosing comes from a very, very high place of Hashem. Because He doesn't have to. The fact that Hashem chose us, that's huge. Wow, Hashem chose us. Now, so what is the vessel that we have that Hashem should choose us? And the answer is Yeshurun. Yeshurun means no beginning, no end. And that's referring to the part of our souls, where there's nobody, and Hashem has chose us. So in other words, when it comes to noisein, there's a giver, but the giver chose. So but why did the giver choose? For no reason. Choosing is for no reason. So that's why Yeshurun, what does Yeshurun mean? There's no beginning, there's no end. If there's a reason, that's not choosing. So choosing, noisein, is more connected to Yeshurun. Because Yeshurun means there's no reason. There's no beginning. There's no end. Why did Hashem chose? So Yivchar Lanu, Hashem chose us. What is that really more? Where does that fit? It fits Yeshurun. Because if there's a reason, then it's not really a choosing. There's a reason why he chose. On the other hand, Yerusha, inheritance on the higher level, that means we're one with Hashem, we're connected to the infinite Hashem. That's more connected to Yaakov. Because that's the essence name of Yaakov. It wasn't the one that was changed later because he did something. That's his name. His name is Yaakov. And that's more connected to Yerusha. So in other words, like this. To recap. There's two components. There's the component where Hashem is choosing. Bachar and Noise, he's choosing to give. That's more connected to Yeshurun. The higher level of Yerusha, where we're literally one with Hashem, that's more connected to the idea of Yaakov, which is the essence name of Yaakov. So based on this, Rebbe explains very powerfully, he says like this. That's why in the verse it says, Yivchar Lanu, he should choose, Es Nachlaseinu, the inheritance. It says Yaakov. Why? Because what's the main point? The main point is the fact that we're an inheritance, that we're a Yoirish. We're standing in the place with Hashem. We're one with Hashem. So therefore it's appropriate to say the name Yaakov in that verse. So what's the request? So why are we saying Yivchar Lanu? The request is Yivchar Lanu Snachlasenu. In other words, you know the fact that we're standing as a inheritance, we're standing one with Hashem? Our soul is connected to the infinite part of Hashem? That's great, but that's on a deep level. We want that should become on a revealed level, because Yivchar already is on a revealed level when you're choosing. So Yivchar Lanu, we're asking Hashem, you know the fact that we're connected to you, we're one with you, Yaakov, we're one with you. We want Yivchar Lanu, which should also be that deep relationship to be revealed in a level of choice as well. And just like the Rebbe says on Rosh Hashanah, the main focus is Nachlaseinu, we're one with Hashem, going Yaakov. But we want that it should be revealed. And the Rebbe said the same thing also by Simchat Torah, which now we're celebrating Simchat Torah, that the main point is Moirasha Kehilas Yaakov. We're one with Hashem. We're one with Hashem. And even though one with Hashem, we say Kehilas Yaakov, the community of Yaakov. Why? Because in the level of Yaakov, we're all one. We're all one. Even the whole kahal, the whole community is one. Just like when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we say Atam Netzavim, we're all standing kulchem, we're all one ke'echad. We're many people, but really we're all one. And that's why, because it's all about being one, connected to the oneness, that's why the mitzvah of the day of Simchat Torah is dancing. We got to dance on Simchat Torah. Why? Because how do you dance with your feet? And so how do you dance with your feet? With the heels of your feet, which is Akev, in Hebrew, heels Akev, which is the level of Yaakov, and the level of Yaakov, we're all one, we're all connected to the essence of Hashem, we're all one. And Rebbe finished off and he says that all the Jewish people become one, literally one, Kehilas Yaakov, we're one, Yaakov, we're all one with the infinite Hashem, not because we have these special qualities, which is above, dividing it up, etc. Like, for example, like the unity of Yeshurun, where Hashem chose, and there's no beginning, no end, but there's parts, but Hashem is choosing that. In other words, by revealing the Makiv, which is above the vision. There's a bunch of parts, but since it's Makiv, so therefore, it's all one. No. Yaakov is real oneness. Yaakov is real oneness, like the heel. And in the heel, there's no big qualities, there's nothing to brag about a heel. But that's real, true oneness. So the Rebbe finished up and he says the same thing also when it comes to the unity of the Jewish people, when we dance with our heel, and the same thing also with the Kehilas Yaakov, the community of Yaakov. What gets revealed? What gets revealed is the fact that we're in a higher level of inheritance. We're one with Hashem. One with Hashem, we're inheritors of Torah. What does that mean? Inheritance of Torah, that the Jewish people and Torah and Hashem are one. Because when you're dealing with a gift of Torah, so you have the Dyson, which is Hashem, the giver, you have the Makabel, which is us, and you have the Matana and the gift of Torah. So there's three components. When it comes to Yerusha, the inheritance of Torah, it's not Hashem is the giver, we're the receiver in Torah. Torah, the Jewish people, and Hashem, it's all one, which is the highest level. You want the level of Yerusha of Torah. We're really all one with Hashem. And Rebbe finished off and he says as follows, drawing down this powerful idea of Meirasha, which means inheritance. Which level of inheritance? Inheritance of Torah, where we and Hashem are all one. And when do we make that happen on Simchat Torah? And therefore, because it's on Simchat Torah, we have to have tremendous simcha, tremendous joy. We're one with Hashem and one with the Torah. And from this tremendous joy of Simchat Torah, we should have the simcha should not only be on Simchat Torah, but should last us a whole year. So we should have a year which is really, really happy with learning Torah, with nothing bothering us, nothing getting in the way, everything we need, we should have, no distractions, nothing should get in the way. And that's one of the reasons why Rebbe says that all the people, we are what we want, what we desire, what we look for the days of Mashiach coming. Why? Because when Mashiach comes, there's nothing that's going to hold us back, nothing's going to bother us, nothing's going to stop us, we're not going to have any anxiety and worry. The only thing we have to do is learn Torah and do mitzvahs the way we're supposed to, up to the point where it's going to be Umallah ha'aretz deyas Hashem kamayim layom machasim. The whole world will be busy knowing Hashem, which means learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, just like the water covers everything over. And how is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? B'bias Mashiach tzidkenu b'korei mamish. When Mashiach comes, very, very soon, very quickly, literally now here in our times. Obviously, this is a very, very powerful Chassidic discourse in reference to Simchat Torah. It teaches you 4 different levels of Torah, but more importantly, that we are connected to Hashem, not we, Hashem, Torah. We're really, really all one with Hashem. And by connecting to the oneness, that creates the greatest simcha. We should all have a great Simchat Torah. And like the Rebbe says, the simcha of Simchat Torah shall last us a whole year with no distractions, just be able to connect to Hashem, learn Torah, and have a great and blessed Simchat Torah. Have a great week, a great year, and a happy Simchat Torah. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to our next class being, as the Rebbe says, with Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Have a great Yontif and a great year.